Hi there, I've come across a request from one of my dear viewers to render the likeness of Fishscale Tinsel and the thing he pulled out of the bog, which I will be happy to dive into in just a moment. If you haven't seen my content before, this series is a world-building project for a fantasy world ruled by goblins, called Gobberland. It's created by names that viewers leave in the comments section of my videos. From those names, I create a character design as well as some lore around the character, usually in the form of a few paragraphs or of a story tying them all into the same universe. For several years now, I've been building this world on TikTok, but recently I've started making long-form content on YouTube. In order to help me get my footing on here, I would really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, or maybe even comment a name for another character for a video. I figure the best place to start with this design is Fishscale Tinsel himself. I only played around with a few designs here before deciding on the look for this little guy. He's not particularly impressive, not much of a fighter, and definitely not much of a looker. I imagine that he's essentially a scavenger, rooting around through the bog, trying to find anything he can sell. In this, my immediate thought was that he's basically the Gobberland version of one of those metal detector guys you see on the beach, complete with the smug look. Instead of a metal detector though, I gave him a big hook on a stick to snag things out of the mire. Instead of the wide-brimmed straw gardening hat, I gave him this funny little floppy, pointy hat that should still do a good job of keeping the sun off of his narrow shoulders and hunched neck. I did still give him the iconic cargo shorts, the ultimate uniform of comfort and utility that I think is well worth of spanning both fiction and reality. I also gave him this big old sack full of things that he's pulled out of the bog. A short bronze sword, an arrow or two, some jewelry, and a shriveled hand with a ring still on it. However, none of these things are the thing he pulled from the bog. And here it is, this massive beast hovering over Fishscale Tinsel's shoulders. From the very beginning of this design, I was positive this was the direction I wanted to take. For the creature itself, I wanted to base its concept off of bog bodies, because it too was pulled out of the bog. Bog bodies are a really interesting phenomenon, most commonly found in northern European countries like Ireland, Denmark, Germany, and the UK. Essentially, these are corpses that have been mummified in a natural process within a peat bog. The low oxygen, low temperature, and high acidity of peat bogs forms a perfect condition to preserve these dead bodies for thousands of years. While the acid weakens the bone, skin and hair are remarkably well preserved, in some situations to the point where facial features like wrinkles are visible. One of the most shocking examples of this is the Toland man. This handsome fella is estimated to have died sometime in the 5th century BC, which would make him nearly 2,500 years old. Despite this, you can clearly see his entire face, down to the creases on his forehead and some stubble on his chin and upper lip, showing that he was usually clean-shaven but hadn't shaved the day he died. If it wasn't for the slight unnatural twist to his face, or the discoloring from the tanning effect of the acid, he looks like he could be taking a nap, or at the very least, only just passed away. While I haven't seen the Toland man in person, as much as I'd love to, I have seen some other bog bodies in the National Museum of Ireland, which were not as well preserved and often quite horrifically mutilated, so I'll not show them here. I did use them as a primary reference for the bog thing, which I believe I'll blur out just to be safe with YouTube. As we get into the coloring, I'm having a bit of difficulty getting just the right color scheme. I don't want it too fleshy, but I don't want it too stony looking. I go through a lot of variations, but I decide on a nice desaturated orangey color that you see in a lot of bog bodies. I wanted to focus on the warmer colors because I knew that the rest of the landscape that I'm filling in is going to be largely made of greens and blues, so I wanted the bog creature to really stand out among it all. At the very end here, I also added a few more pieces of jewelry to Fishscale, just cause I figure he'd be the kind of guy to show all that off, and it would complement his shiny little name. And with that, we should be done with this design, and onto the story of this dastardly duo. Fishscale Tinsel, the richest gob in the bronze bogs and always eager to flaunt it, decorating his worker's uniform in shining baubles like the scales of a fish. Equal parts smug and avaricious, his presence is loved by none, and with the help of the thing he pulled from the bog, he exerts total control over the area. I'm gonna be straight up with you, this gob is a real asshole. This wasn't always the case, of course. He used to be a rather meek bog scraper, even among others in his profession, who tend towards the antisocial. The bog scrapers spend day after day wading through the dark mire, searching for trinkets to sell to merchants. The bronze bog attracts the largest portion of these gobs, who gather in droves to comb through the many treasures in its stinking depths. The tale goes that a great battle was fought here some time ago, a story that's supported by the many pieces of weaponry and armor one can find buried in the peat, sometimes still attached to their former owners. The bodies that lie within the muck look as though they faced their demise only a few days prior, the only evidence otherwise being their notably antiquated garb. Some foul working of the peat preserves their flesh through supposed centuries, even millennia. Faces that last breathed untold lifetimes in the past, still twisted in their final grimaces of terror. Of what these ancient warriors found conflict over, none alive can begin to make a guess. The singular oddity of these miraculously preserved corpses is merely the matter of their wounds. Despite the overwhelming amount of weaponry discovered, none of the wounds the corpses bear appear to have been wrought by the hands of gobs. Each body pulled from the bog seems to have been wrenched, cloven, and crushed in increasingly horrific methods by some great and fearful strength. Such is likely the simple and natural shiftings of earth and peat and the running of water over the passing of years, as most of the region's tourist placards declare. As they used to, at least, before Fishscale Tinsel took control of the region. The stories go that one day, much the same as any other, Fishscale was doing his rounds, wading through the deep parts of the bog where you're as like to find the drowned bodies of other bog scrapers as you are to find ancient treasures. He found something. It was a bog body, of sorts. Unlike the other bodies found, this one was wreathed in golden chains, and it still moved. That evening, when he returned to the scattering of shacks that served as housing for the scrapers, all shied away from him in fear. Walking alongside him was a great beast, many times a gob's height. Its skin and matted fur stained the same color as any other body pulled from the bog, aged and wrinkled in the same way. Spears and arrows jutted out of lined, leathery skin, wedged between bones. Its eyes, though, they glowed an icy white, like the light of the moon through mist. Nowadays, the scrapers steer clear of the bronze bog, for the wealth that lies within its depths pales before the wrath of Fishscale Tinsel, and most of all, the thing he pulled out of the bog. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support me doing these videos, I'd appreciate it if you could drop a like and a follow. I'm almost to the point where I can monetize this channel. If you'd like to support me more directly, I'd be quite grateful if you could throw me a few bucks on my store or on my Patreon. The links for both will be in the description below. Thank you so much.